Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you in this international Sangha today. Welcome to wherever you're calling in from. Thanks to those of you who put it in the chat and others of you who are letting us know we'll be here together. And that's one of the amazing things in this sense of interconnectedness that we are here together from all over the world, energetically appearing with each other. So I'll be leading a 30-minute meditation. I'll offer some instructions in the beginning, in the middle, and the end. And you're invited to meditate in any posture that allows you to be relaxed and alert, to connect with yourself. So the Buddha didn't say that there was one posture that was the fast track to enlightenment. So please make yourself comfortable, if you will, to participate in meditation. I'll ring the bell to start us off. Inviting yourself here, arriving to this moment, welcoming yourself, welcoming all of yourself, welcome the one who is showing up, not the one you wished was here, the one you hoped to arrive in this moment, but the one who is here, just as you are, arriving, present, bringing this quality of mindfulness into the body, connecting with the body, this breathing body, bringing your awareness into the felt sense of the body. Perhaps allowing your mindfulness to rest in the body, feeling the connection of the body to the earth beneath you, maybe the chair, the floor, the cushion, perhaps the ground, the very earth itself. This small earth body resting on the larger earth body. Inviting the body to rest. Feeling the support of the earth beneath you. Feeling held by the earth. And seeing if it might be possible to let go. Let go and relax and be held by the earth. Connecting to this quality of stillness. Feeling the earth in our body and the earth beneath us. As our awareness settles in the body, We may also begin to notice the flow, this rhythm of the breath, this connection to the air, the sky, spaciousness. Taking a moment to connect with the space around you, the space within you, and the vitality of the breath. This gift from the universe that enlivens us. And connecting with your body, this breathing body, it can be helpful to find an anchor to support the continuity of your mindfulness. For some, that could be the connection of the body to the earth or the hands touching each other. Another anchor could be the breath, wherever you feel it the most easily in the body. Perhaps the breath in the belly or in the lungs, the expansion and contraction of the lungs, or maybe at the nostrils, or a sense of the whole body breathing itself. Inviting a sense of gentleness, tenderness, with this connection to the body and the breath and this moment. Inviting yourself with kindness, knowing that the mind will do what the mind does. Lost in stories, thoughts, memories, planning, no problem. Returning to this moment each time we awaken to the fact that we might be lost. Returning to the body, the breath, and this practice of loving awareness, mindfulness in this moment. As we rest our awareness in the body, we sometimes encounter the habitual tensions that we carry through our life. It sometimes can be helpful to connect with the body in such a way to invite the tension to relax, not in a way to get rid of something, rather, a meeting of this body with kindness. Oftentimes, we might carry tension in the area around the eyes, inviting a softening, relaxing the forehead, the eyes, letting go of any extra tension. Sometimes we carry extra tension in the area around the mouth and the jaw, gently connecting with that area if that feels supportive for you. Relaxing the jaw, maybe tucking the chin, loosening the root of the tongue, letting go and softening the area of the mouth and the jaw. For many of us, we hold tension in our neck and our shoulders, some from our work and some from just the body holding up the heavy head. Gently bringing your awareness to this area, inviting relaxation, letting go, inviting the shoulders to soften, the neck to relax, letting go of any extra tension, habitual tension that we might be carrying. If beneficial for you, you can connect with the rest of your body, inviting relaxation, letting go of any areas of tension you may be holding, not needing to make the body a certain way, rather meeting the body with kindness and this capacity for loving awareness. As we come towards the end of this period of meditation, I invite you to take a moment to appreciate yourself. Perhaps appreciating the energy it took to show up today, to offer yourself this period of practice, to join this Sangha, this community, to support each other. Or maybe appreciating something else from your day, some other way that you supported yourself. And then extending our appreciation to everyone else who showed up today, this community, this Sangha of practitioners meditating together, offering appreciation and gratitude for the support of the Sangha. And then widening the circle of appreciation, gratitude, a little more, including friends, family, neighbors. Perhaps remembering ways that you may have been supported, maybe with a friendly wave, someone delivering a meal, driving you somewhere, helping you in the garden. The many ways we're supported by those we know. And then widening that circle of gratitude to include all those we don't know, all those in our community who support us, near and far, the people who are manufacturing our cell phones, working on the Wi-Fi, growing the food, delivering the food, working in healthcare, educating the youth, fixing the roads, the trains. So many ways that there are humans near and far, known and unknown, supporting us, offering them gratitude. Increasing the circle of gratitude even more to include all of the animals and plants, the fungus, the single-celled organisms, gratitude for the plants, the animals, the living beings, and offering gratitude to the earth, gratitude to the water, gratitude for the air, gratitude for the soil, the minerals, and the atmosphere. Remembering that as we practice not only for ourselves, but also for the benefit of all beings. Offering gratitude in all directions and offering our practice as benefit for all. Thank you all for your practice and your commitment today to practice together, for showing up. Appreciate you all being here. As George has mentioned, I wanted to talk today about the middle way, the middle path. this path between extremes. And as I shared today, I wanted to share some of the teachings of the Buddha and then some of the ways that I have taken those teachings into my own life and practice with them. As one of the things that I find so beneficial is to take these teachings and then work with them and explore and cultivate our own experience. And so that's what I'll be sharing today with our exploration of the middle way. And so knowing that we have come together from so many different places all over the world, actually, many backgrounds, different situations, cultures, communities, we all have so much that we bring to the practice. And in this Sangha, we are all included, as I mentioned, including the animals and the plants and all the other humans. And each moment in our lives is practice. Each moment is practice. We bring all of this, all of who we are, all of these different complexities to practice, practicing with ourselves, practicing being with each other, and being in Sangha. So thank you all for being here in Sangha. And as I share today, I invite you to take this quality of mindfulness, this quality of loving awareness that we just practiced during the meditation, and see what it's like to stay grounded in the body as much as possible. And then if you notice that you're lost, come back to the body and really being present for yourself. And so we'll look today specifically at this teaching of what it is to practice the middle way between extremes, as the Buddha called it. And in the Discourse de Katyayana, the Buddha said, thus avoiding both extremes, the Tathagata teaches a dharma by the middle path, this middle path. It's so interesting to me right now to consider what it means, this path between extremes, when I feel like there's a lot of oppositionality in our climate, in our human world. And so inviting us into that exploration for ourselves, what does it mean to find a middle path, to be at home in this middle? And so just sharing a little bit what that means from the Buddha's perspective. In one of the first teachings of the Buddha, the setting in motion, the wheel of the Dhamma, he speaks to this middle path. And the Buddha says, practitioners, these two extremes should not be cultivated by one who has gone forth. What two? Indulgence in sensual pleasures and indulgence in self-mortification. So the Buddha uses language here, which we may not use that much, when he says indulgence in sense pleasures, which is low, crude, ordinary, ignoble, and pointless. And then he says indulgence in self-mortification, which is painful, ignoble, and pointless. Avoiding these two extremes, excuse me, the Tathagata woke up by understanding the middle way of practice, which gives vision and knowledge, leads to peace, awakening, and to nibbana. And so this is language from the suttas, and sometimes it's hard to translate into what that might mean for us. And so I want to bring in this, pointing to this first word that the Buddha says, indulgence in sense pleasures. Indulgence in self-mortification. So it's an adding on, and it's a focus point. And so when we look at what do we mean, what does the Buddha mean by the middle, and how do we engage in this path of awakening, it really starts with understanding what are the two extremes, and then how do we find the middle. And so this self-indulgence, this indulgence in self-pleasures and sensual pleasures. And so we look up the definition of self-indulgence in the dictionary. We get excessive indulgence of one's own appetites and desires, the habit of undue gratification of one's own passions, desires, with little or no thought of the cost to others. So self-indulgence is really this orientation towards what is pleasing to me? What is it that I want? And we know a lot of that in Buddhism, this grasping at what we want. And I really appreciate in this definition how it says with little or no thought of the cost to others. Because I think this is where we can see the impact not only on others, but the impact on our planet. When we are cultivating our happiness and well-being through accumulation, when we indulge our appetites and desires for things and stuff and experiences without a sense of restraint. So coming into a sense of this embodied inner wisdom to know that we can experience the pleasures, the sense pleasures, without indulgence. And then there's this other extreme of self-mortification, self-denial. And this is equally important because sometimes we swing from like, oh, I'm going to give up all of these pleasures and I'm going to deny myself. And the Buddha says this is also painful and unbeneficial and pointless. And even sometimes I think as, Buddhists, we think, oh, it's all about letting go of everything. And there is a lot of letting go that's involved, but letting go can sometimes be a denial of this one here. And this is where our practice is in this very body. So we don't want to negate the body or deny the body or override the body. That's not the path to freedom. So neither the self-indulgence or the self-denial is the path to freedom. Both are detrimental to this well-being and happiness that we're cultivating with our practice. And so each of us has our own place that we're arriving at in the middle path. And this takes this exploration. We can even see this in the Buddha's story, this exploration of extreme renunciation, extreme asceticism that the Buddha undertook. And some of us may have come from a place of very stark frugality, and some of us may have come from a place of quite a lot of luxury in our lives. Wherever we come from, that becomes part of what we practice with. What's it like to know this one here? And so it's this trial and error, investigation, exploration, just as the Buddha did. And one of the beautiful stories in the Buddha's teachings is that of the story of Sujata. And many of you may be familiar with this story where the Buddha had been practicing extreme asceticism and was sitting under this tree, and this young woman named Sujata, who was a farmer's daughter, was bringing rice milk to offer to the deity, the tree deity, and saw the Buddha. And at first thought the Buddha was the tree deity, but then realized it was a practitioner and offered the Buddha this porridge of rice and milk. And I love this story because it's a relational story. And it tells us, first of all, that the Buddha did not wake up alone, that this was in community, and the support of this nourishment from this young woman was part of what allowed him the nourishment of this middle way to awaken. And so with the nourishment, the Buddha was then able to continue the practice. And then we know the story of the night of his awakening. And so after the Buddha awakened, the Buddha returned and was wondering, who can I share this awakening with? Who can I share about this middle way? And so he went, as you know, to share it with the group of five practitioners who he had practiced with for many, many years. And when he returned to them, they were a little suspicious because he wasn't practicing the extreme asceticism that they were. And so they were kind of like, what are you doing? They were thinking, he is eating now. This is not part of the practice to liberation. This is not the way that we practice. Even though we may think that the amount that he was eating was small, to his companions, it was self-indulgent. And so each of us has to realize that we engage with others who will have opinions about us and thoughts about us. And so when the Buddha went there, they also were noticing his countenance, his way of being, his embodiedness. And so they listened to him. And as is the case with so many of the Buddha's teachings, they asked him 3 times, and finally he shared. And, and he said, that these are the 2 opposites that should not be pursued. One is devotion to worldly pleasures, which is inferior, common, ignoble. And the other is devotion to self-torment, which is painful, ignoble, and beneficial. By avoiding these opposites, I have awakened to the middle path, which provides vision, knowledge, which leads to peace, insight, and awakening. And so this sutta here, one is devotion to worldly pleasures, the other is devotion to self-torment, invites me to ask the question, what am I devoted to? What am I devoted to? How do I align myself on this path? What do I use kind of as a rudder for my well-being, for the well-being of the community? And how do I know? How do I know when I am there? And so the Buddha had this understanding and was able to say to his friends, this is how I'm doing it. And the friends in this, were very well received it. And as we know, became part of the first Sangha. And this is the practice of mindfulness that is this embodied knowing, this embodied wisdom that we take here. That's not just a rational, analytical understanding of denial or indulgence. And this really heartfelt, loving awareness to not get hooked, not get caught in what we think we know, what we want, this is the way to really be present with what's right here. And so one of the things I like about these stories of the Buddha's life is that it really puts us in this time where the Buddha is engaging with other beings just as we do. I mean, Buddha spent some time practicing, and we know meditating as we just have, and that also in this relational field. And so, and I don't know, I just really like that he comes to his 5 friends, and his friends are like, oh, I'm not sure what you've been doing, but that's all wrong. This judging mind that they were human, like they're trying to find the right way. And they were like, I'm not so sure about this. But then they listened and they realized that it made sense. And, we too are judged all the time. We're judged by ourselves, we're judged by others, we're judged by society. We end up in this place of how do we know what's right? Because all of the measures and evaluations that come into us from society are so confusing. And in Buddhism, this quality of mind, this evaluative quality of mind is called mano or mana. And it's this rational, intellectual aspect of mind. And it's very helpful. And we engage with it all the time. We're like, okay, where am I going to go shopping for, this? I have to find the best deal. But when we apply it to ourselves, it's an aspect of measuring that we may not actually be in accordance with. So mano is that aspect of mind that measures and assesses things. And so, for example, if we want to measure, we're making a recipe, we want to measure, and some of us are more talented, we might be able to just eyeball it, but we're measuring. So that's a capacity of mind that's very useful. We're reading maps, we want to know where to go. There's a really good reason we have these intellectual capacities. Many of us, though, in our society have overemphasized this intellectual capacity, this rationality. And oftentimes it is connected to what we think we can control. And then when we apply that to ourselves and we begin to measure ourselves and we begin to try to control and constrict ourselves through this measuring, we end up in this place that the Buddha talks about the types of conceit. So some of you may be familiar with these three types of conceit, that the conceit is actually a challenging word for many of us, and this is sort of a measuring. So these three types of measuring. And so the three ways that the Buddha says that we can measure ourselves is: one, I am better than; the second one, I am worse than; or the third, I am equal to. And so it's not, the understanding that you may have a skill that's better than mine. I'm not very good at making chocolate mousse. You may be really good at that. You may be a great seamstress. It's really not this analytical way that we can actually, but it's this embodying the sense of self, that I am better than, I am worse than. And then this third one, I think, is really fascinating, that I am equal. And to me, this is one of the places that is so freeing, because if I am not equal to anyone, that means that this path here, this middle path here, is not the same as anyone else's. That wherever I arrive, the causes and conditions that brought about this being or your being or this community or your community or other communities are different. And that those causes and conditions will bring about different situations. And so one of the places that we can get into with these places of measuring is that we get into a mind that's all about comparison. We compare ourselves to all of these different measurements. Am I better? Am I worse? Am I equal? Am I better? Am I worse? Am I equal? Am I doing okay? Am I doing better? Am I doing worse? And this is oftentimes how we go about the world. And when we look about, trying to cultivate this middle path, like, how do we bring ourselves into a place where we're not comparing all the time? And then when we're comparing based on the measurements of society, are we getting ahead? Do we have enough? Do I have a big enough house? Do I have enough stuff? Whatever it is that our society or our family or our culture says we should be measuring by, then we can bring in those two foibles that the Buddha also speaks to: shame and blame. I can shame myself. I should be doing better. Why am I not there yet? Why don't I have this? What did I do wrong? Or I can blame. They did that. I didn't get it. They got this. I got that. Shame and blame and shame and blame. And these are the ways that we can be constrained by our mind, by this measuring. And we add to the experience. We add to whatever is happening with all of these cultures and the conditioning of our cultures. And so part of my practice has really been to begin to see these habit conditions, the habit conditions that make me add on to what is happening now. So, when I see that, begin the comparing mind, I can really pause and I can really recognize that that is not going to lead us in the direction that is going to be freedom from suffering. And I really love this capacity of curiosity, of bringing in, really, is that true? Because there's so many ways that our conditions have really cut us off from ourselves, from our way of being. And so when I can just pause and I realize all this suffering that I'm adding on by this comparing mind, I try to bring in that compassion and the kindness rather than the evaluation in that moment. And this is one of the places where I feel that being uncomfortable is a really important teacher. Because if I can let go of the evaluation and just be with that discomfort, it can be so instructive. Because sometimes with these two extremes, I often think that, Oh, if I'm feeling good, pleasant, I must be doing it right. Oh, I'm feeling uncomfortable, unpleasant. Oh, I'm doing something wrong. So if I can let go of the evaluative mind, then I can really sit with curiosity and compassion in those places that are uncomfortable. And I find that that's one of the places where I can really unhook, because if I can just be with the unpleasant without being the associated I'm wrong, then I can have some clear seeing and the path to freedom might be available. So I want to share this quote from this teacher. I think she's taught here before, a Buddhist teacher. She lives in New York. Her name is Sebene Selassie. And she puts it this way. It's just such a great quote about how our conditions are informing us. And she says, from the time we are in the womb, we are absorbing all of the messages of our cultures, from conversations, from the way people look at us, from advertising, from kids in the schoolyard, word by word, moment by moment. Yes, comparing mind is just a natural part of our human condition and something with which we have to contend. But in our society, comparing mind is on the steroids of our educational system, consumerism, the beauty industry, racism, and the racial categories themselves, misogyny, homophobia, ableism, fat phobia, and more. So she really says that, we have been instilled with all of these habits of mind, and then we use those to judge ourselves, to judge others, without actually questioning whether we actually want to use those as the framework for our way of being in the world. And then she continues with this quote, and she says, these thoughts are not our fault, and we are still responsible for them, for knowing them, understanding them, and eventually letting go. But we should not blame ourselves for thinking these thoughts. The programming is deep, it's systemic, and it's been going on a long time. I really appreciate how she says these thoughts are not our fault, and we are still responsible for them. Not responsible in the way of like, but rather she says for knowing them. We're responsible for knowing them, understanding them, and eventually letting go. And so this way of knowing and understanding is this helpful way that we can let go of that measuring, let go of the blaming, and understanding that they have been part of this programming that has happened to shape our perceptions and our conditions. And, it's a relationship to our mind, a relationship to our body, a relationship to how we perceive of ourselves. And so for me, one of the places that this has really showed up for me is in relationship to gender. And so oftentimes we think about the gender conditioning and we have our male and our female binary, or the ways that people are conditioned as women, or ways that conditioned as men, and that impacts us severely, and we can feel the resultants of that. And then for me, for somebody who, here I am, 61 years old, and have gone through life without having language to understand and share with others, what is this journey here? And now there's more language available to explain this place of non-binary or genderqueer or gender expansive, whatever the terminology is that people would like to use. And it's not that it's a new thing. It's just the conversation has come about. The causes and conditions have given rise to a discussion beyond these two categories that includes the possibility of more than just those, that we don't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be right or wrong. And the part of the reason why I really appreciate this same, the, better than, less than, or the same, is this way that this expression of each of us is different. And we use these categories to help us understand each other. But the categories are just that, to help us with understanding, not with solidifying the self. And so we bring ourselves into this path to cultivate a deep intimacy with ourselves, a deep inner knowing, of how do we create a path of peace and well-being for ourselves and for our community members. And when we feel ourselves going into these places of separation and solidification, this is the way it is, then we can bring in a lightness, a questioning, curiosity. Is that so? And I also really love this question of, what brings us into love? What brings us into kindness? And so I can know when I am using a quality of mind, I can begin to feel it in this embodied somatic experience to know, is this a way that I'm understanding myself with kindness and love? Is this a way I'm understanding someone else with kindness and love? Or am I seeing through a filter and a condition that may not be leading me and towards freedom? So I see this middle way, this middle path as a way of coming home, a way of coming home to ourselves with loving awareness. And that may sound like it's really easy, but I have to say, it takes a tremendous amount of diligence to disrupt the habit conditions of mind, because they are fed to us over and over again by social media, by marketing, by all sorts of ways that we want to measure success. We can think about it in our society, but we can also think about it in our Buddhist circles as well. Like, how do we create well-being in our communities? How do we create the ways that we can engage with each other to welcome each other's beauty? And so I have often found that it's sometimes hard for me to do this with other humans because I have a lot of judgments around myself and other humans. And so what I have learned to do, because I have a background in ecology as well, is to take my understanding of being in the forest or being in nature and realize when I'm out in nature, I am not judging each tree and each bush and each flower and saying, why aren't you more square? Or why did you choose that color? Or why are you leaning in that direction? Or why are you a solid tree? You should be a thin tree, or whatever it is about trees or, the plants. I'm able to express myself and feel the resonance in the natural world without this judging mind that's trying to lead me in a certain direction. And so I can understand through the ecological lens, the systems and the causes and conditions. Oh, that tree's leaning that way because the sunlight's being blocked. But when I see another human, I immediately bring in a judgment around why are they doing that? They're impacting me, all of these minds. And so as 7A says, can I move to a place of understanding and before I let go? And so I've used this practice that needs to have in it, not the judging, but this real incredible capacity of inner knowing, this somatic embodiment of kindness, to really understand our inner beauty so that we too can see ourselves as bodies of nature. The causes and conditions that brought us into being, the causes and conditions that brought our societies into being, not only just in this moment, but we can even think of the histories. We know that some of the conditions have been historical and have come to us down through the ages. And this body, this heart, this mind has been conditioned in countless ways. Some we know, some we don't know, as it has been with others. And so the Buddha gives us these instructions. We take the instructions and we work with them right here. And what is it that supports us in coming close to this intimacy with the way things are, to find this middle path? Knowing, that we'll be caught again and again, and that we'll need compassion and kindness. And really bringing in this quality of investigation and curiosity so that we can celebrate ourselves and celebrate each other in the places that are challenging, in the places that are easy, and awakening to the world right now as it is, because we really need that. Thank you so much for your kind attention. We have some time now for reflections and questions and comments, and there were some in the chat already. So really interested in hearing what you might have to add to this conversation. One of the ways that I experience the practice is that our wisdom lives in community. It doesn't really just live in me, even though I just talked for a long time. So you all now can share from your perspectives. And how is that landing for you? Are you having something you'd like to add, or questions or comments, or how has your experience been? So just looking at the chat, there were some comments earlier about just the intense pain of feeling the evaluative comments. Thanks, Emma. And so Lauren says, for me, understanding does not root out my conditioning to compare to judge, but when I connect to body and thoughts and feel the tension, discomfort, the deep emotional discomfort, and then hold that in the moment, oh, I am at this moment causing my suffer, can change, overcome the conditioning. Thank you for that explanation, Lawrence, of that process. And I think that's really true, that if we really want to disrupt it, we first bring our mindfulness to it. We first have to know that it's there. And that's the quality of ignorance, the quality of delusion that is so hard to see. That first we have to cut through the delusion to be like, this is here. And then we might have an assessment of it. And then we have to cut through our assessment of it to allow the body to bring in the discomfort and see, can I hold this? So to me, part of that first part is just the ability to turn towards, that you're talking about, to turn towards. And sometimes I found that it takes a number of times to turn towards. So our conditioning, for example, might be, not to address our emotions, to ignore our emotions. And so it takes a number of times of turning towards whatever the emotional situation is right now, feeling the emotions, to actually then maybe have some understanding of what's underneath it. So I appreciate how that process, really talking about that practice. So let me go to Jane, and then we'll look at the chat again, please.
Hello, thank you so much. I feel like you must know that today is my birthday, and I feel as though your presentation was really my day of celebration for, let's see, being inquisitive, being curious, and really doing a lot of searching, or I guess curiosity into what's my path. So I love that you brought that up. There's something else there's three things that came to me from your talk, or a number more probably. But one being that I'm an out lesbian, and I've been for a long time. And I think when I first came out, I found it very hard to have that. The category was helpful and liberating, while at the same time, as you put it, which I think was really beautiful, I felt different than so many of the lesbians I met. So it was kind of like, okay, I know this is who I am, but do I fit in, and how do I fit in? And that kind of realization that we're all different. We all might have the same category, but the way we live it and breathe it and it's our part of the community can be very different and vary, and to honor that. So I want to thank you for what you said about that. It really hit home for me. Yeah, and the last thing you said that really was about what happened for me today, this morning. It's Mother's Day as well as my birthday. So I spoke to my mother, and I just feel like I was on the path that I want to be on. And how do I say that? I feel like I came to a place of being able to be very compassionate, loving, caring, but sharing some very difficult things for her to hear. But she heard them and she was receptive, and it was really surreal. And I thank you,
Mm,
because I think
mm,
just to let go of all the ways in which we get into our own intellectual head and just being in my body and really being able to express myself with authenticity and compassion really made a huge impact. So thank you.
oh. Oh, happy birthday, Jane.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to your curiosity. And yes, for those in the US, you might be experiencing Mother's Day. And so there's lots of ways that we mother each other. So thank you all for being mothers. And I so appreciate that way. You know, one of the things that I think when we talk about identity, especially in Buddhist circles, we often think we need to let go of identity. And what happens there is that then the identities that are recognized are, you know, let go of. But if you are been marginalized or erased, and then you bring your identity into the circle, people are like, why are you bringing that identity in? But then you walk over to the bathroom, and the bathroom say men and women, and so people don't recognize the identities that are actually there, that are being honored. And so, you know, but like you say, oh, hello. And so by the just by its very nature of being marginalized, you know, sometimes when someone brings that in, it's thought of like too much space, because we become so accustomed to a certain way of being. And those are part of the habit conditions that I think are so necessary for us to examine, so that we are not inadvertently causing harm. So thank you. A couple other things in the chat. Somebody says everything feels kind of extreme. Yes, I would actually agree with that it often feels like that. It feels, you know, there sometimes the swing is just really great, just swinging up one way or the other. And people who are new to Buddhism, you know, I think these are the kind of communities, thanks, Rizal. This kind of community can be really helpful, to have these online communities. And sometimes I think, I don't know if this is what you're speaking to, Grizel, with being identifying, saying you're also a brown person, if you're saying that then you end up in white Buddhist circles or not, because there are a lot of BIPOC communities in Buddhism as well, even though sometimes they might not be as evident. I'm not sure if you want to add in something there for that. So looking at the chat, the quote, I'll put that quote in a second, Danielle, from Sebene Selassie. That was from her book, You Belong. Current interactions been troubling, inclusivity and intolerance for self-identification. Singing a lot of happy birthdays. Yeah, and Grizel, if you wanted to add in, you could do that. Okay. Oh, Grizel says not sure how to do so. You could unmute and speak into the room.
Hello.
I think that should be possible. Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Yes. Thank you so much for your talk. This is my first time doing something like this, and I feel like I'm just really grateful. But yeah, I'm a brown person living in a very small town in Moab, Utah, and which is a really scary place to practice this stuff. There's not really a community here. And you know, I've been reading a lot of like Buddhist stuff right now, and I don't even know, like I grew up super Christian, so it's like a very different mentality in some ways, and also very similar in a lot of ways. But I guess like everything just feels really extreme, just having to like only do everything by yourself, not have like, I mean, this is why I found this space online, you know. But I guess like it seems like it's really important to find community to practice with. And I'm just like trying to figure out like how is pursuing that almost like a different kind of extreme. um, in a role, it's kind of like, do I have to move in order? And I know that there's not like a right or wrong answer. But it's just like after a divorce and losing so much, my sister was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Everything happened within like a few months.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just like and like the only thing I want is to be free of suffering. And I have
Yeah.
had so many moments of that, which is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm here. But it's just like, how do you really let yourself be without the support, like human support?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, I hope you see all the support you're getting in the chat.
Yeah.
And, I would say that there's one of these things that often happens when, not all the time, but sometimes happens when we begin practicing, where we actually see more suffering. We see more suffering because we begin to wake up to the forces of like, this is how I have oriented myself in the world. And then I begin to see all the suffering because I am turning towards it. As Lawrence was saying, all of a sudden we're like, oh my, I'm kind of, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm going to do all these habits. I'm going to, pursue work or pursue, drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever, online shopping. I don't know, whatever your thing, not you in particular, but us. And so then when we make this commitment to wake up, to like be present for ourselves right here, it really, there can be a sense of suffering that we may have tried to avoid for some time, that there could be, the Buddha speaks to it as grief for the world, that we are in this world of samsara, all of us, and that we're just bumping up against each other. And so this deep commitment to compassion and loving kindness. And I really support when people start the practice to practice loving kindness. Like, I don't know if you have a practice of loving kindness towards yourself, but that's what I would say: every day, at least a year, practicing loving kindness, and however that works, offering love to yourself. And I know it can feel like super self-indulgent, but this is not the self-indulgence that the Buddha was talking about. Self-indulgence to sense pleasures. Metta is a condition that is beautiful. It's a beautiful quality that we can cultivate. Compassion and love right here. And then it will be hard because we don't get that reflected in the world, especially as you said, where you're living in Moab and as a brown person, even more so in our society in the US, it's like, we don't have to talk about that. It. So I really honor that. And you also are living in the most beautiful, nature. And so, we can remember that we too are nature. And I'm sure that is part of what sustained you there in Moab. So I imagine that is, a deep community. So I'm kind of always like, if I had to come back as a red rock, I would be okay, for another 1,000 years, because it's so beautiful there in Moab. For those of you who haven't visited it, the red rocks there are just extraordinary. And I think that it is important to find Sangha. And so for myself, like I started the queer Sangha here in Oakland because there wasn't one. And it really provided me a foundation. So then I had enough knowledge and understanding to be able to practice anywhere. But I really needed that because I had had so much harm in other places, that to have that place where I could feel that the ability to let go of all that was really important to me. So there are retreats. There's a retreat center in Vallecitos, which is not that far from you. It's a little bit of a drive in New Mexico, in northern New Mexico, that's having some wonderful BIPOC retreats there. So in other places, not too far, but they aren't right in your town. So I know that's a challenge. So thank you for your practice, and wanting to get to Lauren's question, and then there's some other questions. A question from Heidi too. So thank you. Lawrence, please.
If there's other questions, I've put stuff in the chat today, so, and we're running out of time, so
Okay, thanks. We have a question from Heidi, so maybe I'll go to that first, and if we have time. Lawrence, does that sound good? Great, thanks. So Heidi has a very practical question. Crippling anxiety to feel spacious self-compassion and compassion for him is very misguided. There doesn't seem to be a middle ground. Right, yeah. So I'm going to put one of the things that I think is really important is that self-compassion and kindness is not the same as being a doormat. That when the Buddha says, to honor this one here, this embodied experience, that includes our own safety, our own well-being. To offer loving kindness to ourselves is so important. And I'm going to share a quote that has been really important to me as of late by a somatic practitioner. Put it in the chat because this to me has been such a powerful quote. It's by this somatic practitioner whose name is Prentice Hemphill. And they say, boundaries give us the space to do the work of loving ourselves. They might be actually the first and fundamental expression of self-love. So I love this idea of boundaries as self-love, knowing ourselves enough to know, like, I need this right now. And then they say, they also give us the space to love and witness others as they are, even those that have hurt us. So boundaries as an expression of love is something that has taken me a long time to learn, because when I have been, acculturated, conditioned in the gender that I grew up in to care for others as an expression of love, so that caring for myself can feel like, oh, I'm being self-indulgent. But this is where this isn't the self-indulgence the Buddha is speaking to, that creating this boundary of like, this is not okay right now. I think is really important. So boundaries being as an expression of self-love. So I know that I can't speak to the legalities and the practicalities and the incredible challenges of being in the situation that you are in, but I know that it is this place of checking with ourselves and offering ourselves compassion and groundedness. It doesn't mean, that we won't have pain in our lives. The Buddha still had people who are trying to assassinate him, people who are doing all sorts of things. It's a way that we relate to ourselves that then allows us to relate to each other in a place that we can have a little more spaciousness. So that was a little bit there, and I will put that in, Griselle, just a minute. I can't do it while I'm the same thing with that quote. If you can hang on toward the end as we wrap out here, that would be great. And just to spend a little bit of time, little short answer to Alex's question here about how can I avoid disassociation when practicing non-attachment? I love this question. And this is where the embodied experience comes in, because disassociation is when we leave, and we will leave, but at some point we're going to come back. And that's the waking up. So then if we come back and then we begin to judge, then we're disassociating again. But if we can come back and even as much as we can touch into that discomfort in the body. I'm just going to mention another resource here, Dan Siegel's Window of Tolerance, which is very helpful in this. As we practice, we can begin to know our window of tolerance. And so we can see, oh, I'm beginning to disassociate. Can I bring in some compassion? Because we will, especially those who've experienced trauma, we will disassociate. And so non-attachment and knowing the difference between when do I feel the letting go that is of non-attachment, and when is this disassociating is a very important somatic experience to engage in. Wow, thank you everyone for these wonderful conversations. This is such an important thing to me about how we practice in our lives, in our communities, and for ourselves. And so, what we'll do right now is I will offer the dedication of merit, and then I'll pass it back to Georges so that he can close us out. And so the dedication of merit is a ritual that we do that is a way that we remember our interconnectedness, and that when we practice here in community, our practice is like dropping a pebble in a pond and rippling out in all directions, so that we don't really know the impact, and we can wish for that impact on others. So taking a moment to dedicate the merit of our time today. May we offer any wisdom, any beauty, any merit from our practice, from our intentions, our thoughts, our activities, offering to all beings everywhere, all beings near and far, seen and unseen, known and unknown. May we offer any merit to all beings, so that all beings everywhere know moments of peace. All beings everywhere know moments of freedom. All beings everywhere have the opportunity to awaken. Thank you so much.